So the part that is most important here is to remember what began, and how it began, and when when you look back on the reality of who started this, you got to give the credit where it's due, and that's J. Fox de Moissey, the attorney who became the defendant's lawyer, the unknown defendant's lawyer, who was me. Now, 3 days after going into September, on September 29th, the war began. 3 days before that, we had no notice, nothing was happening whatsoever, and so it was recommended that I take the what I had written, which was the book Intent to Deceive, and I would seal it, and in order to make sure that it was not open, I I took one copy. I actually had two copies, and I took one copy, and I took it to the post office. I had it posted, and I gave two copies to Fox, and within 2 days of the time that uh, that one of these copies went over to Wyatt Terran Combs, there was an order, and the order began with a unconditional surrender. There was nothing that you could do. We had an um, uh, incredible sense of relief in a way that we were finally getting something. Uh, for months during the summer, there was nothing. They weren't going to pay any attention to the documents because they had them. They were waiting, and we were not even sure they told that Wyatt Terran Combs told Brown and Williamson, because that would have ended their contract. I mean, or whatever. There was a little thing called the confidentiality agreement that nobody could ever produce, and yet this was the whole basis. And I was to have seen. I mean, at some point, you would think that this would be produced. You could see it, or it would be there, but that's not exactly the way it was. There was no confidentiality agreement that it was ever signed or ever presented. There was the lawyers and the group that came were from Wyatt Terran Combs and a fellow by the name of John Ballantyne, called the Judge Wine, Thomas Wine, and he was the youngest judge. And I don't know how this happens, but he had worked for Wyatt Terran Combs at one time, and the presentation was very simple. I wasn't there, but later on I would be able to see the tape, and I saw what happened. Fox got notice. I don't know. Someone had told him, "Look, you're supposed to be at this hearing if you want to be," and that certainly wasn't Wyatt Terran Combs, because they didn't really have a reason to to call. But in any case, what happens is that we sit here for 3 months, and there's nothing. They've got a box of documents, and then on the 27th, around the 27th, less than 2 days, they get this sealed book which was Intent to Deceive. That was the book that I wrote, which exactly explains everything that's in the box and a little bit more, because I was studying hearings and everything else. And the style of the case, which they were presenting as an injunctive relief for Judge Thomas Wine, was the entire partners, every one of 90 some odd partners, which were on the first page, the style of the page, and then underneath it were 90 partners at Wyatt Tarrant Combs. It was called Maddox et al. Versus unknown defendant, as represented by J. Fox, the Moissey attorney. And so that's how this begins. And for those of you who think it begins with Dickie Scruggs, it doesn't. And for those of you who think that the American legacy was built on the foundation of the Master Settlement Agreement, this is not true. Because at this point, when they come together and they have a reason to come there, because they got the head. They have my head. They got the head is the book, and the book is telling you what's in the document, so they can't lie. And they have to somehow come before everyone. Fox shows up later on without notice. They didn't see fit to notice him, which is okay. But and what happens is that Judge Wine just goes along with whatever they are saying, and I believe at one point said, "What if we serve the wrong person?" Well, Judge Wine says, "Well, I guess we just served the wrong person." You know, this is a young judge. He was hired. He was looking for a career as a judge. He lost his election once. He won it after he got support by Wyatt Tarrant Combs and other people. He's an appellate judge now, so he's going up the ladder. Not that he was a bad judge. I don't know that. He did make some fairly weird decisions. I'm probably the only person in the entire history of American legal jurisprudence to have been snuffed, so to speak, by a judge in an order which was written to the effect that you could not talk to your own lawyers about anything at all, except the rain, the baseball, whatever. And I think that some people don't really understand how important it is if you have been served the humongous lawsuit and you're there and you can't talk to your lawyers or your lawyer. In this case, J. Fox de Moissey. And that is what went on for the total amount of time, for 4 years. And I don't care what anybody says. There was no way out. If you ever did, even for an instant, a moment, mention between your lawyer anything that might turn out to be privilege, and they challenge it, the judge would disqualify you, and you simply would just, that would be it. The lawyer would have to go. And so that was the catch-22, which a lot of people didn't understand. Thank you very much, Wall Street Journal, for your very elite interpretation of what we did. But the reality was it was a brilliant move. It was the texture, the thoughts, the concept. It was ethical. It was reasonable. It was the way every other lawyer would do it if in a different situation. Yes, it was highly toxic in many ways. But a man did this. A man, a genuine hero. A figure who you never hear about, you never did hear about, because it was so much categorized by Fox de Moissey and people like Lowell Bergman and the whole team down in the Lewis theory land, that this was a product of Mississippi. It wasn't. This was a product of one man, the idea of J. Fox de Moissey, and it brought out the wolves and the hounds and everything for the period of time. And it started on January 29th. That was War Day. We submitted the documents. The documents were given to them. Yes, there was a demand letter. It was there, and this was the way you practice law. And if you wanted us to sue you, fine. That's what would happen. And if you wanted to settle, we would consider it. But the idea was not in any way to create a toxic situation where we were not going to follow the rules. If you really want to look ahead, I think it's soothing to think that that there was some violation, but there wasn't. And so when Judge Ballantyne approached the bench, and he knew he had a judge who was going to be very sympathetic toward Wyatt Tarrant Combs, and that's what happened. And Fox, I was served in the afternoon at 4:00. Fox had been there. This was a 2-hour hearing where Judge Wine said, "Well, if you don't serve that person right, serve someone else." And you keep serving until you get the right person. So it was an unknown defendant. We were very happy in many ways that this happened because it ended a period of time where we weren't getting any kind of coverage, and so any nut could have picked us off, and we spent 3 months worrying about this, and that was a possibility, if not a probability, but we managed to get through that period of time. And when you think about this in wherever you are, and you're looking for someone who started this third wave or this litigation that ends up in the master settlement agreement, look to the north or toward Kentucky, because that's where it all started. Now, a lot of people just completely obliterated this. This became persona non grata. I nursed this lawsuit for the longest time. Fox de Moissey was there all the way, but the reality of what is and what is not the truth is that on the 29th of September, this was the beginning of the third wave in terms of tobacco litigation, and it began with a very heroic man by the name of J. Fox de Moissey. And on that note, we can look at the comparative lawyers and what they did, how they did it, how they took information, and see how it shapes up. Personally, I believe that this was the best way, no question about it. For 4 years or more than that, I was kept silent, and Fox de Moissey couldn't talk with me. My counsel in Washington couldn't talk with me. I couldn't say anything, and everybody else was having a great time. No matter what happened, it started on that date. And if you look at the history and you look at it clearly, and I hope it's remembered that there's not just one interpretation from the Wall Street Journal and the Motley Fool and the various sources that came out right after that. There is only one, and that's a person, and the person was in the name of J. Fox de Moissey, who represented the unknown defendant, who was served on the 29th of September 1993, and that's when the war began. Okay.